Hi, everyone. I hope that you can hear me and that I am, in fact, live. I don't see it showing up yet on my LinkedIn. So if you're here, if you hear me, if you see me, and you have my personal cell phone number, if you can just text me and let me know because I don't see it on the application. So someone can let me know. That would be great. Very, very strange that it's not showing up yet. I may start it and stop it and restart and see if that helps. Let's see. Hope I'm not talking to myself. Technical difficulties. All right, I got a text. Thank you. Thank you, Tony. You can hear me for some reason, though. It is not showing to me, so I can read your comments, which is my favorite part to see who is all with me. So maybe it will pop up. I'll just keep that up. But thank you so much, Tony Johnson, who's always there for me, right? Even my most trying times, for letting me know that you can hear me. I also hope that I have earplugs in. I hope that you can't hear. As you know, I live in New York City, very noisy city. Someone's car alarm keeps going off and it's very noisy. So hopefully you can't hear that because I have the earplugs in. If you can, I'm sorry. Hopefully you can just ignore it and block it out. So welcome. We will go ahead and get started. It's still not letting me see myself live, but hey, we will continue on, but I'm sorry I can't give the shout outs. I don't see it. So thank you all that are here today to this LinkedIn Live. Today we're going to be talking about, should I be authentic at work? Now, there's a lot of talk about bring your whole self to work. Bring your most authentic self to work. And I get questions a lot. What does that mean? So let's just start with the question of, and what I like to start with, should I be my most authentic self at work, or should I fake it or make it? And you probably have heard both of those concepts at some point. Now, fake it or make it. Thank you so much for sending me text. No background noise. It makes me feel good. So a lot of times, as I talked about a few weeks ago, many of us suffer from the imposter syndrome, right? Meaning that for some reason we feel as if we don't deserve to be in a workplace or in a particular position at work. So we feel like we are an imposter. But what that tends to mean is that means that we may at that point decide to fake it till we make it, meaning I feel like I'm an imposter. Maybe I'm the only minority there. Maybe I'm the only male or female, or maybe I'm the only one without a Ivy League degree. There are so many reasons that we may feel like we are an imposter. So when we do that, when we feel like we're an imposter, we tend to then fake it till we make it. Or another code for that is we may code switch, meaning that we act like we're going to fit in with the cultural norms there, no matter what that means, even though those cultural norms really don't fit in with what our authentic self is, right? So let me give you an example of that. So if you have heard me before, you have heard me tell a story. If you've heard me speak, you've heard me always start out asking the audience after I've spoken for a few lines to say, as you can probably tell, and if it's especially if I'm here in New York City speaking, I'll say, as you can probably tell, I'm not from New York. Or if I'm in a northern city, I'll say I'm not from the north, and I'll say, guess where I'm from? And so I will get responses from the audience, who will say, oh, you're from Atlanta, you're from North Carolina. And they name all of these Southern cities and states. And I sit there, I let them guess, and they're very confident about it. And then I'll say, well, actually, I'm from LA. And then there's like this blank pause, and people are like, oh, they start to question everything that they know about themselves. Like, how can you be from LA? I'm sure you're from the South. And then I say it, my punchline is Lower Alabama. That's what LA stands for. And you can see the sigh of relief on their faces. Oh, I don't have to question everything that I know. You are, in fact, a Southerner. I can hear it in your voice. But there's a story behind that. When I moved and was relocated from Arkansas to New York, I definitely suffered from imposter syndrome, not just in the workplace, but just being in this ginormous city as this little country girl from Alabama. And but while I was there, when I first started, my husband warned me, like, don't go in there being Southern, don't be too nice, don't be too hospitable, don't go hugging people and doing all of these things. And really, that's, really the person that made me who I am. Those were my primary characteristics. If you know me, and I'm comfortable with being authentic now, that's who I am. I am going to speak to everyone. I am going to say hello. I'm going to shake everyone's hands. I'm going to make eye contact. But because I questioned whether or not people would think that I was credible, and smart and intelligent, because I was from the South. I just thought that people in New York thought that people from the South weren't as smart as they were, that we were quote unquote country, because that's what I would hear. Oh, you have a country accent. So what did I do? Well, I would drive into work and I would practice accent elimination. I would change some of my words, my lingo, things that I would say, how I would say it. I would practice not making so much eye contact with people. I would practice not being so nice and hospitable. I need to be the mean Northern HR lady. But you know what? That wore me out. I found myself spending more time pretending, trying to fake it till I made it, than actually concentrating on those characteristics and those traits that got me to where I was, that got me that opportunity that I was presented with in New York. And so one day I woke up and I said, you know what? Forget this. I'm just going to start being myself. I'm going to start, being authentic at work. And for me, being authentic meant that I worked in a very empathetic way. I was the kind of person that was going to stop and talk to you, whether you were the janitor or the senior vice president. I was going to learn everything about you. I wanted to know how you got there, what your plans for the future were, and how I could help you. And I was going to bring on that Southern charm, even in the way that I led as a human resources leader. So once I did that, I really started to make connections with everybody there. I really started to build credibility. I really started to bring trust in my operational leaders and also the frontline staff. And I was able to make some real connections, increase employee engagement, and just really meet all of my both personal goals of who I was as an HR leader and helping the organization to meet their goals. And that's when I decided to encourage others. You know what? I don't know if I'm all about that fake it till you make it mess. And maybe there are some situations where that works. We've all perhaps taken on an opportunity that maybe we're not as qualified for. Maybe we fudged a little bit on your resume or thought, this is a stretch assignment. And in those terms, I would say, yeah, have that confidence, act like you know what you're talking about, until you get it. I get that. But when it comes to being authentic, when it comes to bringing your full authentic self to work, bringing your culture, your background, your experience, That, my friends, is what you should not fake. You should bring it all there. So when it comes to the question of should you fake it or make it or bring your full authentic self to work, I always vote for bring your full authentic self to work. So before I move on, I'm just going to check in to see if they're giving me access yet. Nope, not yet. I still don't see you guys. But thank you. So Tony's texting me who all is there. So I'm going to give some shout outs. Thank you so much. Nancy, thank you for joining. Tamisha, Marie, Gina, Wendy, Nellie, Renette, Paulo, Pearl, Juanita, Tanya, Emmanuel, Patricia. Thank you all for joining. Wish I could give you more shout outs, but again, hopefully I'll get to see that I'm online soon. This is very, very strange. It feels funny. I feel like I'm talking to myself, but that's okay. Not abnormal for me. So going back to being authentic at work. So there can be a fine line there, right? When I say to bring your authentic self to work, right? I don't mean, you've got to understand first, what traits you should be bringing, right? You've got to understand the organizational culture, the organizational values, and understand where you fit into that culture and where you fit into those values. There may be some things that I do in my personal life that I don't bring into the workplace, right? And that's okay. We all have that. And it's okay to have that divide between your personal life and your professional life. So I'm not encouraging you to show up and be unprofessional or just go against the values of the organization, because a lot of organizations, right, they're going to have those values. And sometimes we may not, from a personal standpoint, agree with every single value that the organization has. Sometimes they may be counter to our political views, or they may be counter to our faith or lack of faith, right? So there may be times that not every single piece of your personal life will fit into your professional life. But that's a decision that you'll have to make, upon accepting that opportunity, right? And if you accept that opportunity, you need to understand that going into that organization, you need to understand where your differences are. And let me be clear, because, I like to call myself an organizational culture expert. And let me be clear, there's probably no organization where you're going to fit 100% like into the culture, where you're going to agree with every single decision that the organization makes, where you're going to agree with every single value, every single policy. That's just not going to happen, right? So you've got to go into that knowing that there may be some things that you disagree with that don't fit in with your personal values. But it's very important that you do that analysis before you embark on that journey and on that opportunity. I also encourage employers, for leaders on here that have the opportunity to hire people, that you also are hiring for cultural fit and organizational fit. Now, I want to talk a minute about cultural fit, because I really hate those two words together, but there is a such thing. As an HR person, I've had hiring managers to come to me and say, oh, I sent a candidate to them, and they'll say, oh, I'm going to pass on that candidate. And that may take me by surprise, because I may go in like, yes, this is the candidate. I had the opportunity to meet with them. They're perfect. They're just what the job description says. I really think that they'll do great here. And then the hiring manager says, oh, I'll pass. And I'll say, well, why do you pass? And they'll say, oh, just not a good fit, not a good culture fit. And some people may leave it at that. I never do. And I'm always curious, well, what part of the culture does not fit, and I always ask them very specifically, is it a value? Do you ask questions about the values and their past practices and what they would do, certain behaviors that will align with the values? What was it specifically? And if they can't tell me specifically how that person or why that person is not a good cultural fit, then I'm suspect. Well, you probably are having some sort of bias or prejudice or something like that against that person, right? But I do encourage you to interview for cultural fit. Ask those questions around values of the organization, right? So if you have a value around teamwork, if you have a value around respect, ask questions around there. Give specific examples of how those values would impact the day-to-day decision making of that employee in whatever role that they play. You know, you can say something like, hey, let's say you're in a hospital setting and, you know, a patient has tried to give you a tip upon leaving because you did such a good job at helping them, or some sort of gift. You know, how would you handle that, knowing that the hospital has a policy against employees accepting gifts from patients? Ask them that, you know, and ask them how they would, the patient insist upon that. Ask them to navigate that situation. That's how you determine cultural fit. That's how you determine how authentic the person is in the organization. So really, when we think about authenticity, it really goes both ways, right? I'm trying to determine, maybe as a candidate, if I can bring my whole authentic self to work in this organization. And the organization is trying to determine if they can accept you as you are. Now, so far, I have talked about bringing your authentic self to work in terms of behaviors, values, culture, and experience. But there's another part to this story. So let me just check in again just to see if I have anything yet. Nope. But thank you so much, Tony, for getting me updates of what people are saying. Oh, somebody said they got their hand slapped for doing that. I'm assuming the accepting the gift. You know what? And in that situation, just own up to it and say, you know, my apologies. I didn't realize I was supposed to do it. But you know what? Whatever gift I have, I'm willing to share with everyone else. Right. So therefore, you're not getting a personal game. Thank you so much for letting me know that LinkedIn is having problems today. So Juanita, welcome. Michelle, thank you for joining. Marcus, Diana from Tampa. And Marcus, you say values, beliefs, and assumptions. Yes, those all fit into there. So segueing away from those, like I said, those behaviors, the culture, the experience, another way that we show our authenticity is in our physical form. If you saw the flyer that I put out regarding this, let me see if it'll let me show you. It won't if I'm showing the camera. If you saw the flower, you saw my, head was standing up on my hair was standing up on my head. It was in its purest natural state, right? And there are other physical ways that we show our authenticity, right? We show who we are, how we show up. We're showing our personality through our physical traits. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's not accepted by employers. So many cities have passed laws here recently saying that they're called the Crown Acts. And it's basically saying that employers cannot discriminate against you for wearing your natural hair. Now, for those of you that don't know what natural hair means that you're wearing your hair in the way that it comes out of your scalp without being manipulated, right? So right now, this is not my natural hair. I have manipulated it by blow drying it, fly ironing it, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is, at one point, I used to always wear my hair like this. I thought I had to wear my hair like this in order to fit into the organizational culture, because as I looked around, I didn't see a lot of people with big bushy hair that I typically have if I don't manipulate it like this. And so therefore, I would spend time straightening and, doing all these things to it, putting chemicals in it, trying to fit in with that culture. But I really wasn't being authentic. I should be able to have the option to wear my hair in whatever way, straighten it or wear it in its natural way, as long as I look professional. and as long as I'm doing my job well. And there are other physical things that people like to bring or like to do to that is a reflection of their culture. That's a reflection of who they are, that sometimes can be seen by organizations as unprofessional. Whether it's having too many earrings, you got an earring over there, earring in your nose, or a tattoo. We have kind of told ourselves that all of that's unprofessional. And I don't know where we quite got that from, who made those rules. I haven't seen where someone who has a visible tattoo is any less intelligent, as long as it's not offensive, as someone who doesn't. But we've made up these rules where we've almost created a homogeneous workplace. And what that has told us is that's not the best business decision. The more that people feel as if they can be authentic, that they can be comfortable with who they are and their background, and be able to show off their culture through physical characteristics, the better that they perform. So unfortunately, though, although going back to hair, because that's probably the most frequently thing that's talked about when we talk to people about, from a physical standpoint, being authentic. Although many states or municipalities and some states have passed laws that have said that you can't discriminate against someone from wearing their natural hair, I was very, very disappointed to see that there was a U.S. court that banned dreadlocks in the hiring process. So in this particular case, someone showed up for the interview. They were wearing dreadlocks. I think they actually got the offer for the job. And then when they went to meet with HR to do their onboarding or something like that, the HR person said, you know what, you really can't wear dreadlocks here. I mean, yours look good. They look clean and professional, but they can get messy. You know what I mean? That's what the HR person said. And so when the person said, well, I won't be getting rid of my dreadlocks, the HR manager responded by saying, well, I'm going to have to rescind your offer, believe it or not. So the person filed a complaint, the candidate filed a complaint with the EEOC for race discrimination because they're saying dreadlocks is highly associated with African Americans. And so therefore that was race discrimination. And so the EEOC agreed with that candidate, filed a lawsuit on behalf of the candidate, and they lost in court. The court says that, yes, dreadlocks are associated with African Americans, but that's something that essentially you can change. So the courts are saying if you're able to change something about yourself, then essentially that can be race discrimination. So you can't change your skin color. You can't change where you're from, those types of things. But they're saying that employers can say, yeah, we can ban this if you're able to change it. I don't agree with that. And hopefully other courts won't follow suit, because that means that we would be taking steps back instead of steps forward in this process. So as I close tonight about authenticity at work, it's from behaviors, from, being vulnerable at work, especially if you're a leader. I can't say enough about vulnerability, saying, look, I was wrong, or I need help. I don't know everything. Help me out here. That's being vulnerable, sharing your experiences, the good stories and the bad stories, right? That's being authentic. People respond to people that are genuine. People respond better to people that are authentic. And when we are able to behave that way, we develop trust. We develop credibility. That's great as a leader. That's great as a colleague. That's great if you're meeting with clients, if you're producing content or products. That's just the way that we should be operating as we work together. And it's not just internal, it's also receiving other people's authenticity, right? It's not just about you, it's about receiving other people's and realizing that you may be being, someone else may be bringing their fully authentic selves to work. And maybe that's not how you would express things, or maybe that's not how you would dress, or what you deem as professional. But we've got to start thinking away from that. We've got to start thinking outside of ourselves and being more accepting of others, right? We've got to have more acceptance of others. And we've got to start being more empathetic to others. It makes a good business case. So I hope that this court case that came down this week again, I hope it doesn't set the trend. I hope just the opposite. These statutory regulations that have been passed down from a municipality to from a state level will be the trend. And we will continue to see laws and legislations and statutes that encourage people to be yourself at work. Don't fake it till you make it, especially when it comes down to your true inside, your culture, what makes you you. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to be you. So just checking in one last time just to see what you guys are saying. Yes, Nelly says, I agree. You should look professional, but who defines a professional look? You're right. It's very, very subjective. I try to actually steer clear of even, using that word. It's very rare that I've seen someone and I thought to myself, oh, that's unprofessional the way that they look. And if I do, I question myself, like, why do I think it's unprofessional? Is it because something that I wouldn't do? Is it something that, from a norm, historical, specifically, if it's not offensive to someone, it's probably professional. And we should be doubting ourselves when we think so. So Annette says, I was encouraged to be open and honest. And when I was, they reprimanded me. That happens sometimes. And I talked about that last week. And if you go through those steps I talked about last week, when you're trying to be, open and honest and you're reprimanded, go through those steps. And that's probably not the organization for you. That's the key word. The key thing is that we should not be working in organizations that don't accept us for who we are, no matter who you are. Again, I'm sorry that I couldn't see all of your comments and questions, and hopefully I can see the replay if they show it to me, and I can respond to you in the comments. Thank you so much, Toni Johnson. Go follow her on LinkedIn. She shares some wonderful content on LinkedIn, and she has a phenomenal podcast, Mind of a Man, over on Instagram on Thursday nights at 6:00. So follow that too. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Thank you for your patience through the technical difficulties. Next week will be a better week, hopefully. And I thank you once again for joining. Have a fantastic evening, everyone. And I'll see you next week. And let's continue to talk about work.